Hey, everybody. Is there such a concept of Kiddush at a church? Like, do they have the equivalent of what we have? I personally am not so familiar. Haven't been to too many church services to know. I did look it up, Googled it, and yeah, some of them serve coffee and donuts after services. And some of them, once a month, will have a potluck lunch type of thing. People will bring food. But the whole idea of it, like an elaborate display of food, of cholent, of kugel, of herring, of dips, and all those things, they don't seem to have something like that the way we have at Kiddush. And the idea of serving scotch, tequila, or vodka, definitely not. And then the whole Kiddush Club concept, where you have a group of people who are eating in a side room during services, I'm confident that's not happening in a church service. I'm pretty confident that's not going on. And then certainly also, they probably don't have the equivalent of a JFK Jew. What's a JFK Jew? Just for Kiddush. It's the guy who shows up at the end of service just to partake of the food. I am confident they don't have anything, the equivalent of that. So I came across a Gemara that might explain this very, very divergent, different view of religious services and food between Gentiles and Jews. And it was in this week's Daf Yomi. And it explains that, you see, there are two types of volunteer offerings that were brought to the Beis Hamikdash, to the temple. And if a non-Jew wanted to bring an offering to the temple, he's allowed to do that. We're okay with that. We're fine. That's okay. And so the two types are olot, an ola goes up, it's all burnt, the whole thing is destroyed, or shlamim, which is related to the word shalom, peace. It's like an offering, a peace offering, a volunteer offering, where the owner actually partakes and eats from the offering. Like some of it is burnt, but the owner, it's like a barbecue. He gets to eat from it as well. The Kohen gets to eat from it. It's a nice thing. We share the food. So those are the two types. All burnt are the type that we eat. So comes along Rev Huna, and he tells us, Shalmei ha'oved kochavim olot, that if a non-Jew, it says oved kochavim idol worship, but if a non-Jew says, I want to dedicate the shlamim, this type that we eat from, to the Beit HaMikdash, we assume he's talking about an ola, an all burnt offering, and that's how we treat it. We burn the whole thing. Nobody eats from it. Why? So Rashi tells us, as a Gentile who is unaware of the nature of the temple sacrifice, he mistakenly believes that every offering goes up entirely in smoke to heaven. That this non-Jew, the idea that we're going to eat from this, we're going to participate, we're going to enjoy this barbecued food that from the animal that I'm bringing to the temple, that's a foreign concept. It's like, no, who does that? And so even though he used that term, we still treat it as an ola, we burn the whole thing. Because again, in the mind of the non-Jew from thousands of years ago, from the Gentile, the idea of, using food as a part of a religious service, it kind of doesn't go. Spiritual is spiritual, material is material. We don't mix the two. They're separate. When you want to eat and have a feast, you want to eat, you have a feast. And when you're involved in the religious aspect of things, you do the religious aspect of things. But you don't mix the two together. We Jews have no problem mixing the two. As a matter of fact, Kiddush, Kedusha, the definition of the word holy in Judaism, Kedusha, is using the material for a spiritual purpose. We're not only comfortable with that, that's how we define holiness, is to use the material world for a spiritual purpose. And so therefore, there's no dichotomy, there's no divergence, there's no problem with having a whole beautiful meal and spread of food in shul after shul. Okay, yes, I agree. It's gotten out of hand in a lot of places. Kiddush clubs, I'm not a fan. I'm not sanctioning that. But we Jews historically have always understood that the definition of holiness is not abstention from the material world, but utilizing the material world to get closer to God. Kiddush is made over a glass of wine. That gives you a bit of a buzz. Yeah, that's what Kiddush is. All holidays, marriages, every religious ceremony. What do we start with? We make a bracha, a blessing over wine. And if anything, we're coming up to the holiday of Pesach. And if there's any holiday that's defined by food, Pesach is it. The whole recollection and understanding of this great, phenomenal, historical event that defined and began our people, it's all focused around food. Matzah, the arba kosot, the 4 glasses of wine, maror, having a feast, everything is around food. So perhaps this is why in Judaism, in our history, the idea of having a nice Kiddush at shul, we got no problem with that. We're very comfortable with that. The non-Jew historically, and I know I'm generalizing, but historically, this idea of spiritual and physical going hand in hand, that kind is a bit of a foreign concept. And so the whole idea of having Kiddush, the way we have in shul, that they would have in church, doesn't really happen. That perhaps is the explanation, but once again, the bottom line is we're coming up to Pesach, utilize that food to reconnect and reinvigorate our definition of being a Jew and being part of the great people of Am Yisrael. Shabbat Shalom and Hag Sameach.